Hello and welcome to the first episode of On the Origins of Music. My name is Sarah and I'm a senior at Arizona State University, majoring in music and culture and minoring in anthropology. I am fascinated with the question of how, why, and where musical behavior originated in modern humans. Music has this incredible binding power. It surpasses barriers like language, religion, and ideology to heal, bridge divides, and bring us together. This understanding marked the beginnings of my initial interests in the roots of musical behavior. While there are vast differences between musicality in modern humans compared to animal species, one can speculate that musical behavior can share a common evolutionary function or purpose across these species. To really, truly answer my questions surrounding human musicality, I felt it was essential to look outwards towards closely related species, particularly non-human primates, to really answer my questions on the origins of musical behavior. So why is it important to look towards primates when studying human language and musicality? To simplify, modern humans and non-human primates, most specifically chimpanzees, have high levels of genetic similarity, suggesting a common or shared ancestor. This genetic similarity means we are closely taxonomically related, meaning on a phylogenetic tree, like this one, modern humans, also known as Homo sapiens, intersect with chimpanzees, gorillas, and other primates through a series of branches, which ultimately connect to a larger mammalian tree. Because of this similarity, I thought an avenue of research, not just into modern human musicality, but early human musicality, would be through the study of musicality or musical behavior in non-human primates. I believe that modern primates can provide us with some insight and a window into how musicality has been expressed in hominin species throughout time, and how that holds significance to current modern human music. It is important to note that throughout this episode, I am defining musical behavior as behavior involving vocalizations and non-vocal communication, primarily consisting of percussive action, such as drumming. My interpretations of this behavior are not meant to imply that I believe these studies highlight examples of primates intentionally music making for music's sake. It is true that the human ability to create, structure, diversify, and stratify music, often in conjunction with cultural ritual in an intentional, informed way, is something truly unique. However, music and musicality are inherently linked to language and communication, and this communication is expressed in non-human species in what one could define as quote-unquote musical behavior. I believe this behavior is a window into the initial functions of hominin and early to modern human language and musicality, not necessarily that there is intentional music making itself. Furthermore, while I have consulted peer-reviewed studies in the making of this episode, my extrapolations, ideas for further research, and opinions are my own, as I have not conducted my own research in terms of studies. Now that we have that out of the way, let's finally delve in to the subject at hand. While there is a lot of complex detailed neurobiology at the heart of language, communication, and music. I will go into the specifics of that in humans and in non-human primates in another episode. There is such a vast amount of information out there regarding hormones, genetics, and neural activation associated with music that would be difficult to cover today. Instead, this episode focuses specifically on studies of musicality or musical behavior in non-human primates and how it is relevant to early to modern human communication and musicality. Let's start with rhesus macaques. Rhesus macaques are a species of Old World monkey, referring to where their natural habitat is. Although there are also New World monkeys, they are less genetically similar to anatomically modern humans, and in this episode, we are not going to be reviewing any examples of their behavior. Rhesus macaques are a great stepping stone in the study for potential candidates of early to modern human musicality and function. They exhibit musicality in the form of drumming and vocalizations, and we're going to talk about one such example of that today in a study published in 2009, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, entitled, quote, "Monkey Drumming Reveals Common Neural Networks for Perceiving Vocal and Non-Vocal Communications." In this study, researchers examined vocal and non-vocal communicative behavior in captive male rhesus macaques. It is important to note that while in captivity, behavior can vary from macaques in a natural, more wild setting, so I would be curious to see how this differs. They found that these vocalizations, in combination with nonverbal communicative gesturing, which is in this case drumming, quote, activated overlapping temporal networks. They suggest this means that vocal and non-vocal means of communication developed together simultaneously, which the researchers hypothesized could mean, quote, vocal and non-vocal communication systems share a common evolutionary origin, end quote. When this is analyzed within the context of early to modern human musicality, something really interesting emerges. In terms of speech as well as music, the coordination and combination of vocal and non-vocal forms of communication are common. While I don't know the full implications this information has on further study, I think it is essential to mention that this discovery could hold relevant implications to further work on early to modern human music making. Furthermore, beyond neural overlap and connectivity, this study dives deeply into expressed behavioral characteristics in connection with macaque musicality. Researchers discovered that male rhesus macaques that used vocalization and gesturing held higher social status within the group and were often physically larger. Their larger size allowed them to produce bigger sounds while demonstrating that these vocalizations do carry social information. Neurologically, these behaviors, in part, depend on activation within the amygdala, a part of the brain responsible for emotional reactions and responses. When less dominant macaques are subjected to these vocalizations and gestures, they do experience activation within their amygdala, which means there is something emotionally or pro-socially triggering within that interaction. From the standpoint of the researchers, some of their takeaways from this study are that, quote, primate drumming might represent a precursor of musical abilities in humans, and that, quote, vocal communication and drumming may have co-evolved into the human faculties of language and music. In early to modern human musical behavior, there are still significant gaps. The specifics are not exactly clear. While you may infer from these studies' findings there is a stratification and hierarchy inherent in macaque groups that make these vocalizations necessary, or that neural overlap within brain regions responsible for vocal as well as non-vocal communication is interesting in terms of its similarity to singing and drumming in human musical behavior. Where this information holds an exact or direct correlation to human musicality is inherently unclear. However, in general, part of the reason communication exists is to reinforce existing social hierarchies and group cohesion. I believe that music also holds this function. Cross-culturally, music is used in rituals, rites, and ceremonies where rules, order, and social standing are integral. If rules are broken or violated, this music can lose its ritual power and potency. Perhaps musicality in early humans, in fact, is due in part to the reinforcement of these social norms and hierarchies. When the individual succeeds, the group succeeds, and the species succeeds. I'd like to now turn our attention to the second study I'm going to be highlighting today, quote, entitled Vocal Greeting Behavior in Wild Chimpanzee Females, which was published in 2010 in Animal Behavior. This study's findings are definitely exciting in terms of their behavioral ramifications, especially since chimpanzees have the highest degree of genetic similarity to humans out of most non-human primates, at around 98%. Chimpanzee females have a unique form of communication which is used within social settings. It's called a pant grunt, and it's a vocalization used in greeting a more dominant group member, primarily males. While pant grunts were conventionally known as a symbol of submission by less physically or socially prominent females in greeting males, much was not known about the specifics of when and where these pant grunts occur. The researchers found that although pant grunts were always used within submissive contexts, their use depended on a variety of external social factors, such as proximity, not just to alpha male chimpanzees, but to other males as well. This offers proof that the pant grunt vocalization is a refined example of primate musicality and communication that is adaptable to a variety of social settings, something that holds subtlety. In addition to language, I believe that musicality in early to modern humans is necessary for complex communication and the reinforcements of social norms. While this study does have gaps in terms of its discussion of further research that would potentially give us more information on early human communication, I think it would be interesting to examine vocalizations and musicality in submissive dominant interactions in modern humans, as the interplay of social status, standards, and emotions are at the heart of the modern human experience, which seep into language and music. I would like to next talk about a different range of focus, rhythmic entrainment. Simply put, rhythmic entrainment refers to the synchronization or realization of a rhythm around a given tempo or speed. In a study entitled Spontaneous Tempo and Rhythmic Entrainment in a Bonobo, Pan-Paniscus, published in the Journal of Comparative Psychology in 2015, researchers studied rhythmic entrainment in a female bonobo and found that, quote, the bonobo spontaneously entrained and synchronized her drum strikes within a range around her spontaneous motor tempo, unquote. This means that the female bonobo was able to maintain a consistent tempo close to a natural internal rhythm. Furthermore, the researchers suggest that the implications of this study extend far beyond the context of bonobos and non-human primates. In fact, they say that increasingly complex acoustical gesturing and signaling used with vocalizations could have led to speech development in early to modern humans. In addition to early language, music making and musicality in humans is incredibly dependent on rhythmic entrainment, as well as coordination of vocalizations and gesturing, resulting in detailed and complex musical behavior. And I don't think it's too much of a reach to assume that the benefits of rhythmic entrainment in early humans are more than just applied to language. They apply to music as well. Finally, I would like to highlight a different study focusing on another species of non-human primate, gibbons. Gibbons are another excellent example of a non-human primate that is vital to the exploration and further understanding of early to modern human music-making capabilities. Immature male gibbons produce female-specific songs. Published in Primates in 2013, researchers examined a call believed only to be produced by mature male gibbons. One thing that I think is really defining about human language and musicality is how it's learned. Whether maternal or from an outside source, humans gain a lot of our information from outside, learned sources. Interestingly, in terms of these great calls, the same is true in gibbons. From observations of two species of immature male gibbons, one wild and one captive, researchers discovered that male gibbons sang female-specific great calls before the onset of sexual maturity, at which they switched then to typical male calls. This use of female song was previously unknown and undiscovered. This information hints at songs being maternally learned and acquired, suggesting that great calls changing coincides with other hormonal changes in the body. Call changes being hormonally triggered or altered, as well as songs being something actively learned, is relevant to human language and music. Because despite songs being maternally learned, songs changing with the onset of sexual maturity to something typically male or female also serves as an identifier, letting us know who's communicating. Ultimately, humans acquire language and we learn, separating ourselves and individuating ourselves. Conclusively, there's a lot of information left unknown about the development and acquisition of music and language in early humans. However, through looking at the studies of some of the most genetically similar primates, we are presented with a unique opportunity to look into the past and see the beginnings and origins of earlier forms of our communication. In humans, language and music serve a fundamentally similar purpose. It serves a means of communicating, of conveying emotion, stratification, and structure. Musicality in primates is not much different, in that it serves the purpose of aiding communication within groups, serving as an identifier of status or sex, and as a means of conveying and reinforcing social hierarchies within groups and outside of groups. While musicality in primates is not necessarily intentionally musical, such as in human music, some of its qualities are analogous, giving us a lens with which to view the potential purposes language and music might have served in the past. Furthermore, primate musicality is incredibly complex. It is full of substance, variation, and subtlety. The examples highlighted within this episode are highly dependent on social situation, extraneous social cues, and other social and group identifier information, which carries much weight. While ultimately we cannot hear our human or hominin ancestors, listening and learning from examples of primate musicality serves as a means of potentially hearing and understanding the past. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Kay Norton for her work with me over the past 3 semesters. She has been incredibly affirming, a consistent source of support, and an incredible mentor. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.